Night.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to bring a little bit of diversity this season. So that's why I asked you to come on so we could talk about woman's point of view. Because we've had several guys come on and be guests and talk to them. So, but before we get started with all of that, how about you give a little brief introduction on Danny Rowe?
Well, Danny Rowe sings R&B and sometimes a gospel song, but mostly R&B. So try to keep it, not dated, but try to keep it old school a little bit. With a little of today's music, a little bit of today's production. But yeah, definitely, I like the old school.
So
I'm still old school.
So how did you get started in this business? Because I've known you for a very long time.
I started as a teenager.
All right.
I was put into a group called Area Code 914. I'm from Alberta. And at the time, my manager was Gene Griffin, who was very well known in the industry, and he was, I believe, the uncle to Teddy Riley. And his partner and some of his partner's friends that I knew from school, they were actually monitors in school. They were like security. And he said he needed a female singer, and they were like, "Oh, we know some," because I was always singing in school. And Orville Gilchrist and Gene Griffin started me off in a group called Area Code 914. But they asked me to do something that was like, I've always been the same, had that sultry sound. So for me, R&B was, home base. It was either that or gospel. So they asked me to sing something pop. And I mean, it was real pop.
Yeah.
We talking 80s pop.
Wow. What was it? Material Girl style, was it?
Well, it is. And it wasn't really fitting my bill. Anyway, we went through, took me down to Unique Studios back in the days, that was the it spot.
Big shout, yeah.
And we recorded the whole night. I remember living off of black coffee and sugar.
Right.
And still had to go to school the next day. So like the 10th grade or something like that. 11th grade. And, at the end of the session, I was like, I hate it. I hated doing it. I'm like, that's terrible. It's not me. Anyway, they loved it. They were, everybody was going crazy, and they took it to Teddy Riley, and all I heard was they said he shook his head and said, "She's not ready." The crazy thing is that I wasn't even mad.
Right.
I wasn't even mad because I was like, the best thing they could have done for me was not let me be me and just do my own thing. If he would ever meet me again, he would have known they made the mistake.
Yeah. So where did things go after that?
I mean, after that, I basically, I found a couple of teams, production teams, managers, and, I did perform a lot. I went out, did a lot of performing locally.
Yeah.
And just, I played all the local spots that were happening back in the 90s.
You and I used to sing together a lot. We used to do a lot of duets and stuff.
Yeah, I was mostly in the studio recording. I would go out and I would perform, a few clubs at a time. I did Red Parrot, I did Honeysuckles back in the days. We did a few Underground. I can't even think of all the spots right now. I'm sorry. My train of thought, but yeah, no, we did a lot of performing and recording. And I found out 3 years after I did the performances. So this was like, I was like 19, 20 around the time. By the time I was like 23, 24, I ran into one of the people that were promoters, one of the promoters for some of the shows I was doing. And they were like, oh my God, back then I wasn't Danny Rowe. Back then I was going by my middle name, which is Brandisha. And you know, they saw me down on 59th Street and was like, oh my God, we've been looking for you for 3 years. Arista's been trying to sign you and we couldn't get you. And I was just like, well, you know, everything happens for a reason. But I found out that the producer at the time was basically telling people he was my manager and he wanted a production deal. But he told me about Arista. He knew, but I didn't know.
Now, so back in the 90s, production deals were like commonplace.
Right.
Yeah.
And he had a few acts. They had no talent. It was,
right.
I was writing for a group he had. And I mean, they could dance. They danced their behinds off. I think there was like 1 or 2 people that could carry. One person that could really sing. And then I think 1 or 2 could like maybe carry a note. But yeah, they didn't go anywhere. And I found out, you know, way too late. But, you know, these things happen. That's what the industry was made of. Back then, you know, you really had to take control of your career.
Right.
And if you didn't, it was very easy.